Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens and this is English Nerd. So this week I have for you a very special episode in honor of St. Crispin's Day, which is October 25th. This is just before October 25th, 2018 as I record this. Now what is St. Crispin's Day and why does it matter, you may wonder, to the English nerds of the world? Well, let me tell you. I love St. Crispin's Day. St. Crispin's Day is the day of the Battle of Agincourt, which is depicted in Shakespeare's Henry V. It's a historical battle between the English and the French. In the Shakespeare play, anyway, the English are hopelessly outnumbered by the French, and it is just a grim day as the English are trying to take over this French area, and it looks like everybody, including the king himself, Henry V, is going to die. But in one of the greatest speeches of all time, and yes, I'm including you, Winston Churchill, in this, in one of the greatest speeches of all time, Henry V, the young king, steps up and really becomes the king that he was born to be and gives the St. Crispin's Day speech, as it has been lovingly termed, which I will give you in just a little bit, but I'm telling you, it is so magnificent. And if you're thinking, well, I don't really want to just sit down and read the play, I hear you. Shakespeare is not necessarily the best if you just sit down and read it. It was meant to be seen originally, and so a version that I would very highly recommend is from The Hollow Crown. The Hollow Crown series covers several of Shakespeare's plays, and Henry V is one of them, played by Tom Hiddleston, who does an outstanding job. Another one that I would highly recommend as well is Kenneth Branagh's version, which is from the 90s, I forget what year, but if you look up Henry V, Kenneth Branagh, it's right there. There's baby Christian Bale in there, so lots of fun for those who like that kind of thing. So in addition to just nerding out over this minor nerd holiday, I wanted to give you 8 really fast tips for memorizing speeches of your own. Maybe you have the opportunity to choose your own speech to present, or maybe you actually have to write and deliver a speech. Here are some things that I have found very helpful in memorizing and a little bit of delivering speeches as well. So tip number 1. You should understand your speech really thoroughly. Now, if you write the speech, of course, this isn't really an issue, but if you, say, have to deliver a Shakespearean monologue or something, you need to understand the speech before you give it. That means you look up the words, that means you have an interpretation, at least a reasonable interpretation of every line. If you don't understand it, memorizing it is going to be a beast, let me tell you. Now, number 2 is listening to the speech. This is the way that I've memorized as much Shakespeare as I have. I've just listened and watched and listened and read aloud and watched and listened to these plays. So if you find a version of this speech, maybe it's a very famous speech given either by the original speaker or by some famous person who delivers it, then take advantage of that resource and listen to the speech. If you're anything like me, that will help get it into your brain like a song or something. You'll get the beats of it and it'll stick in there better. Number 3 is the old-fashioned, just line by line, go line by line. For the Henry V speech, it starts, "If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss, and if to live, the fewer men the greater share of honor." So if you were memorizing that speech, you would just stop there and you would do those lines again, do those lines again, do those lines again, add another one, and so on, just through the whole speech, which I would highly recommend. I'm telling you, this speech is so inspirational that it shows up in many other works as well. The movie Renaissance Man, for instance, I've heard good things about, but I haven't seen the whole thing. I have seen the clip, however, when one of the main characters delivers this very speech that I'm talking about, but I get ahead of myself. Once you think you have the speech down and you're maybe not quite ready to deliver it in front of anybody that you know, write it out. See if you can write it out flawlessly. If you can, chances are it's in there at least, and just ready to come out. Number 5 is focus on those areas that you struggle in. You know those lines, you know those words that tend to trip you up, whether or not you've written the speech yourself. And so make sure to focus on those areas more than those areas that you feel comfortable in. I know that it's really easy to sit back and just practice over and over again those sections that you know well, but instead focus on those areas where you know you tend to mess up. That way you will strengthen those until they become as strong as everything else that you've memorized. Number 6 is something that I would not skip at all. Practice in front of people. I'm not just saying under your breath aloud, I'm saying in front of people. There's a completely different kind of energy, a completely different kind of focus that is required when you are delivering any kind of recited work or speech in front of an actual living human being. So if that means cornering your family and making them listen, then do it. If it means talking to your friends, calling them up and just saying, hey, listen to this, then do that. Maybe you have a test audience, maybe you're running for some sort of position. That's awesome. Go you. But gather up a few people and you can either have them just listen passively so you can get the jitters out, or you can ask them for some feedback. Do I use filler words? Is my voice monotonous? All that good kind of stuff. Which brings me to my next tip, which is plan for your nervous energy. Even people who are pretty confident on stage giving speeches, I've gotten to the point where I'm fairly confident speaking in front of people, even they have some nervous energy from time to time. I know that I definitely do. When I'm in front of a class, I don't have that much nervous energy necessarily, but if I'm speaking in front of a room full of teachers or parents or the entire student body or something like that, then it becomes a little bit more nerve-wracking, and I have to have a plan for how to productively use my nervous energy. So what I recommend to my students is that they plan their movements so that they actually enhance the point that they're trying to make. If they're giving a Shakespearean recitation, for instance, maybe they're weighing up the options to be or not to be, and they use their hands like that just to illustrate that these are the options that you're weighing up. Plan for you to need to use that energy. Maybe you can move around, start engaging the audience, but have a plan and start acting that out in front of your test audiences to see if it really works. Number 8 is when you feel like you're starting to really get ready to deliver this speech or recitation, you should put your own inflection into it. So by that I mean, okay, now you know the words, now you know how you're going to move. How are you going to use your own voice to inflect properly? What words will you emphasize? You can't just say something in a monotonous way. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country laws, blah, 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 blah. I mean, nobody cares. Nobody cares if somebody speaks in that monotonous way. And so you should plan for which words, which statements are the ones that you really want to stand out. We shall fight them on the beaches. We shall fight them on the landing grounds. Have those inflections ready and prepared. Once you can put your own inflection, your own spin on something, and you can kind of move that around at will, which words you're emphasizing, that's when you know that you are truly ready to deliver a flawless speech or recitation. So I was thinking, I have to do something for St. Crispin's Day, and I thought, I probably have a copy of Henry V. I mean, obviously I have my movie copy, which I love so much. And I have all these. I'm just going to show you here how many of these Dover Thrift. Okay, this is how many Dover Thrift Edition Shakespeare plays I have. I have Henry IV, Part 1. I have all these. There's the Hamlet from the Hamlet series. So I thought, I'll just grab Henry V. I'll just bone up on the speech, and it'll be great. And then I realized, wait, I don't have a nice big copy like that of Henry V, and, all my complete works of Shakespeare are at school or elsewhere. So I realized I do have the world's smallest copy of Henry V, but this is literally the only copy I have at school. Just to give you there, look, this is how big it is. This is how big this copy is. I hope somebody else sees the humor in this because... yeah, so, alright, so I'm going to try to give this speech. It's not going to be flawless, but here, it needs to happen because it is almost St. Crispin's Day, and this tiny book is calling for the St. Crispin's Day speech. So remember, once again, King Henry V, untested, untried, young king who used to be all into partying, is needing to prove himself in front of his men. And so he starts taking over pieces of France, and they've come to the point where it looks like everyone is going to die. They are so hopelessly outnumbered. It's something like 10 to 1 or more. And so he gathers his men and he gives this speech. I'm just going to keep this in case I forget because I didn't spend a lot of time preparing for this video. Confessions with me. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. By Jove, I am not covetous for gold, nor care I who doth feed upon my cost. It yearns me not if men my garments wear. Such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive. No, faith, my coz, wish not a man from England. God's peace, I would not lose so great an honor as one man more methinks would share from me for the best hope I have. Oh, do not wish one more, rather proclaim it, Westmoreland, through my host, that he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. His passport shall be made, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us. This day is called the Feast of Crispin. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named and rouse him at the name of Crispin. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is St. Crispin. Then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispin's day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot. But he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names, familiar in his mouth as household words, Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story will the good man teach his son. And Crispin shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England, now abed, shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's Day. So that was it. Just an excuse to give the St. Crispin's Day speech. So if you would like to memorize that speech, I believe it is in Act 4, Scene 3 of Henry V. So check it out for yourself. Watch the version with Kenneth Branagh or Tom Hiddleston. Feast your neighbors, especially the ones with scars. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Hope this was helpful. I will see you next Monday for another English Nerd video. Feast his neighbors. I missed something. With advantages, what feats he did that day. Wait, I'm gonna do it again.